Hello, and welcome to day 9. Today we're going to talk about the brain dynamics surrounding food and why our evolutionary program wants us to eat and eat some more and keep eating. And I've alluded to this before, but our brains are somewhat outdated. They haven't changed that much in the last 10,000 years. Some studies even show they're actually getting a little smaller. But how this affects us with food is that our technological development, our cultural development is outpacing our brain development. And that causes a lot of problems. Because when our brains think they're in the kind of a Stone Age warring tribes type situation, then we don't stop to kind of recognize that there's grocery stores around the corner or that we have access to food whenever we want it. Our brains just are working off of a scarcity principle that say get food as often as possible, as quick as possible. Because we run off an algorithm which is avoid pain and seek pleasure. Those are the two main rules of thumb that have been passed along through our genetics. So our brains are still living through that kind of outdated system. Even though we have such access to food right around the corner, we still go for the high calorie food. Our brains don't care so much what we care about or what we look in a swimsuit. Our brains care about surviving. So they go with the things with the highest calorie count and you get the quickest intake of food possible. So, an example that really exemplifies this in the animal world, that kind of shows what we're going through as humans, is the case of the Australian jewel beetle. The Australian jewel beetle is almost going extinct. And the reason for that is that in Australia there's a little thing called a stubby, a little beer bottle. And it's big, brown, and shiny. And it just so happens that the Australian jewel beetle, the males really like mates that are big, brown, and shiny. So their algorithm is to go after those type of mates. So when those beer stubbies get thrown to the side of the road by someone passing by, then those male jewel beetles will attack that thing and go after it and try to reproduce with it. But that's a real problem because they'll do this until they are killed through sun exposure, they're eaten by ants, or they starve to death. Because they're just going off of their old algorithm which tells them what to do. So this is a real problem, but it really kind of shows us what we're doing as a species too. You know, obesity is the third largest preventable killer in the US that we don't do much about. Everyone seems to just be consuming without thinking or talking back to their brains and trying to talk themselves off the ledge, because it really is dangerous. We're doing the same thing the Australian jewel beetle is doing. We're kind of screwing the bottle and not thinking about the consequences. We're just going off of our old programming without kind of questioning our own thoughts. Some people even say that you're not actually thinking unless you're talking back to your thoughts, unless you're kind of having a conversation with those thoughts. Because scientists say that like 90% of what we do is really just run off of our unconscious, our brains telling us what to do. And our brains don't really trust us to do the right thing, so they tell us to go for the chocolate cake instead of the broccoli, and we just follow its orders. So we really have to stop and think and talk back to our brains. And one way to do that is to identify our permission-giving thoughts, things that kind of push us over the edge to do something that might not be in our best interest, something that like our impulse control would tell us to do, but we just don't do it. So a permission-giving thought could be, you know, it's Friday night, I've had a long week, I deserve this, a double fudge chocolate ice cream, right? And there is a grain of truth in that. You do deserve something after a tough week, but you have to bring your brain online and have a balancing thought that says, well, okay, maybe I don't need that as a reward. I do need a reward, but maybe not that. And that's talking back to your brain. So we have to get better at identifying those permission-giving thoughts so we can kind of not be ignorant anymore and bring those balancing thoughts more online, especially around food because it's affecting our whole lifestyle. So for today's self-reflection, we're going to look at your favorite permission-giving thoughts, and then so you just kind of have a better idea of what those are for future, and you can fight back against them. That's all I have for today. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow.